Okay, guys, Dr. Tom is back, coming at you for more study about the nervous system. We left off with the human brain, the most complex object in the known universe, supposedly. Okay, the convolutions on the brain are called gyruses or gyri, and the cracks in it are called fissures. Central, longitudinal, these. There are some major ones, guys, in here that you use as reference points. But yeah, it's probably not your idea of fun to have to memorize all that. Now, I made a promise to you. Remember what I said. Once you learn the bones of the skull, you've learned the lobes of the brain. It's the same terms. Here it is. It's a frontal bone. Here's the frontal lobe. Parietal lobe, bilaterally. Temporal lobes, bilaterally. And occipital lobe in the back. This lateral sulcus is one of the main cracks here. And this central sulcus is another main crack, or fissure. So, like I told you guys, it's a piece of cake. The lobes of the brain are named exactly the same names as the, excuse me, my nose itched. I wasn't picking it. Frontal lobe, the executive, behavior, personality, motor control. Means muscular control, motor. Pretty important. Frontal lobe, motor activity. The primary motor area is the precentral gyrus. Just in front or anterior to that main crack there. Frontal eye field, so a lot of vision is processed there. Also, some of our speech area is Broca's area. Speech is very complicated, guys, and there are a number of speech areas throughout the body, so it's really something special. Functional areas of the cerebrum. Okay, so here's the central sulcus. Here's eye field. Here's Broca's area, motor, speech. The motor portion of speech. Olfactory means smell. This is the temporal lobe. Auditory association area. Hearing is processed in the temporal lobes down by the ears, so that's good. Here's auditory cortex. The occipital lobe, guys, is vision. The occipital lobe is vision. The occipital lobe is vision. And then the temporal lobes are hearing. So all the visual processing is back here. So this is the central gyrus. This would be the post-central gyrus because it's to the posterior of it. Somatosensory means sensory detection by the body. What was I going to point out here? Primary motor area. A lot of the motor control of muscles and stuff is in this precentral gyrus here, guys. The crack is fissures again, or sulci. Actually, I'm sorry, sulci is the more official term. Yeah. Okay, this homunculus thing, it's, in general, these portions of the motor of the frontal lobe control these parts of the body. So if you draw this little homunculus, this homely little person here, like the toes are controlled right here, and where the body parts of this person is about the area in the frontal lobe where the nerves that control that are, okay? Other central lobes, parietal or cerebral lobes, we mentioned. Somatosensory, gustatory is taste. Gustatory is taste, you need to know that. Temporal is primarily auditory, hearing down by the temples. Also gustatory, which is taste. Olfaction, again, which is smell. And of course, the occipital is visual. The occipital lobe is visual. Functions involving many cerebral lobes. It's these speech areas. Remember what I said a moment ago. Speech is quite complex. There are areas in temporal, parietal, and occipital lobes, usually in the left hemisphere. The cerebrum, guys, comes into two big hemispheres that come together, and an area between them that's called the corpus callosum. Association areas helps to interpret sensory information. Examples, visual, auditory, and somatosensory. So these are like backup areas to those senses. Okay, the diencephalon. So we're finished with the cerebrum, the big main portion of the brain. Here's the corpus callosum, by the way. The next part is the diencephalon. It contains the thalamus and the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus, guys, is extremely important because it controls the endocrine system through the pituitary gland, but it also controls all these a lot of these basic functionings like temperature and stuff in the body. Extremely important. Here's the pituitary gland. It's very close to the hypothalamus. And then under the hypothalamus, or the diencephalon, thalamus and hypothalamus, we have the brainstem. And they'll probably, here's it. The brainstem has three parts. From upper to lower is the midbrain, which is the reflex center of the body, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. Now, a lot of students will recognize that from the movie Waterboy. I didn't see that part of it. I don't remember. But apparently he talks about his medulla oblongata. The brainstem is of extreme importance, guys. All that basic stuff like maintaining pH and oxygenation of the blood and blood pressure and sleep and rest and heart rate and all that stuff that's automatic is controlled by the brainstem and the hypothalamus. Okay, the cerebellum looks like a little tiny cerebrum all of its own. It's at the base of the skull. It mediates reflexes and motor skills, and also something called, and I don't see that in here, something called proprioception. Proprioception is the term for knowing where our limbs are in space without having to look and see where they're at. It's awareness of your position in space. With a P, proprioception. Coordinates motor activity, evaluates sensory input. Real important. Okay, there are some structures that are across several of these different divisions of the brain. The limbic system is said to be the emotional brain. It's a series of nerves that extend through different parts of the brain. The reticular formation, reticular activating system, is consciousness, sleep-wake cycle, and so forth. Sleep, coma. And then there are memory areas. With limbic, you always hear it associated as, I can't give you a better definition, guys, because I just don't recall. But the limbic is always described as the emotional brain, and the reticular activating system or reticular formation has to do with sleep-wake cycles. Sleep is real important, guys. If you think about it, we spend a third of our life sleeping. If you get a normal amount of sleep. When I was in the Army, we went through sleep deprivation quite a bit. For combat soldiers, guys, in combat you might have to go days without sleep. Your life might depend on it, so they get you used to it. You don't ever get used to it, but you learn you can deal with it. And it's really rough. Of all the stuff, the extreme exercise and the road marches and the runs and not getting enough food and rest and all, the sleep deprivation is the worst. Okay, basically 2 stages of sleep. The important one is REM sleep. REM means rapid eye movement. It's when a person's asleep and you see their eyeballs moving around and they're jerking. It's because that's where most dreaming takes place during REM sleep. If you deny a person REM sleep, or an animal, like a dog, we've all seen dogs snoring and jerking and having dreams. What little sleep they get will be REM sleep. So it's essential for life. If you don't experience some REM sleep over a period of time, you will die. You'll deteriorate. Memory areas: intermediate memory, short-term memory, long-term memory. Okay, I have no problem with that. I guess that's all they're going to say about it. Okay, protecting the central nervous system. One is the brain is completely encased in the cranium, and the spinal cord, the other part of the CNS, is completely encased in the spinal canal. But we also have 3 membranes around the central nervous system called the meninges. All of you have heard of meningitis. It's an infection of the meninges. Here it is, meninges. We also have fluid that circulates through the brain, and the brain kind of floats in it, and it circulates into the brain and also around the spinal cord, and that's called cerebrospinal fluid. This is important to know. It's abbreviated CSF. Everyone calls it CSF. Everyone knows what CSF means. Blood-brain barrier, there's a special barrier around the brain that only lets certain substances in with the blood. So it's a heavily protected area, as it should be. Here's showing the meninges. There are 3 of them. There's the small inner one is called pia mater. The next one is called arachnoid mater. And the outer, thick, tougher one is called the dura mater. Here's the bone. So if they took a section of the bone right here. And then here it starts getting, here's the brain itself. So here are the three meninges from inner to outer, or from outer to inner, dura, arachnoid. The subarachnoid space is used to administer drugs and stuff a lot. So meninges has these three layers of covering. You need to know them, of course. Protecting the central nervous system, CSF, formed in ventricles, which are like cavities in the brain by the choroid plexus, circulates through the subarachnoid space, down the central canal of the spinal cord. It would be correct to say that the central nervous system is floats, or basically within the cerebral spinal fluid, CSF. It has to drain too, because it's being produced all the time. Drainage of CSF must equal its production. Arachnoid villi project into dural sinuses filled with blood. CSF drains into the blood and leaves the brain. If the amount of CSF, guys, is altered, like the most common way I know is they do an epidural on somebody. And CSF does not have clotting factors like blood, so sometimes it will continue to leak out. I've actually seen it before. I've had people come to my office and it had a spinal tap, and it looks like clear fluid running out there. You have to go back to the doctor, and they do a blood patch in the old days. And also, they have real severe headaches afterwards. So apparently, if you lose a little of the CSF, it causes headaches. So it circulates through these ventricles and around, and then also the spinal cord. The medulla oblongata, guys, of this part, brainstem, continues on and tapers and becomes the spinal cord. Blood-brain barrier made of special cells, astrocytes. Remember, that's one of our glial cells within cerebral capillaries, little tiny arterial vessels, prevents some toxins from entering the CNS from the blood. Some drugs, for therapeutic purposes, can pass through it, and some can't. All right, we finished. So proud. Let's see. Let's go over parts of the brain real quick again. We have frontal lobe. This is within the cerebrum. Frontal lobe, 2 parietal lobes, 2 temporal lobes, 1 occipital lobe. Here's the cerebellum. This is the central sulcus. This is the what is it? I don't remember. I know, I bragged about learning all this. Yeah, but that was in the 80s. Central sulcus, maybe? No, there's the central sulcus. Okay, well, anyway, you can see where these primary areas are, guys. Now, the brain is not like a computer. For years, they've wanted to be able to say that it is, but it isn't, because they've not been able to reproduce memories and stuff by stimulating the exact point. There was some research in that area, but it only worked on people who had autism. No, not autism. Who had where they have seizures. What's it called? I can't think at the moment. Epilepsy. It only worked on epileptic patients. So bingo, their theory went down the drain, and they were heartbroken over it. Because they always, guys, want to make it look like the world is a machine. I've got news for you. It's more like a thought than a machine. I've spent many years researching that. Guys, you need to get my book. You have The Force is With Us. It's good. I'll even autograph it for you. You can get it on Amazon for about $15. Or you can get a used one for $2 or $3. And also go on and subscribe to my channel here and like these videos some. It'll help me out tremendously. I've just started all this. I'm trying to promote this. I've had this book out, guys, for 11 years. It's been successful in that the critics like it, but it hasn't sold much, and it's too important to just linger out there in mediocrity. So, okay. Diencephalon, thalamus, hypothalamus. Brainstem is real important. Midbrain pons, medulla. It's often just called the medulla. Okay, we're about finished, guys. Good job. Pretty much covered the muscles and the nervous system in these last tapes or videos. So we'll see you next time. Dr. Tom is signing off. Be there next time with me, or be square.